defensively, Mississippi State played a game that I think you can build off of going forward. Um, I felt throughout the game they did a great job of keeping everything in front of them. They did a great job of uh, running to open ball carriers. They did a great job of preventing explosive plays down the field. And so I mentioned the three-man front thing. People were so ticked off, like, oh my God, we're doing these three-man front looks again. It's not like Southern was just gashing those looks. I think people had this idea of every time we went to a three-man front, Southern was getting 5 yards a game. Like, yeah, they had a couple decent runs, but a lot of times when they were doing that, the defensive line held up enough to slow down the ball carrier, and then you have linebackers and safeties coming in to make the stop. And that's kind of the point. When you play that style of defense, you are playing bend, don't break. You are playing with the idea of we are trying to limit the damage. We are trying to prevent explosive plays, keep it all in front of us. We are trusting we can go up and make a tackle and trusting that the offense is not going to be able to sustain this over several plays. And that's exactly what happened. I put it out. They gave up 4.07 yards per play. That is the fewest they have allowed in a game since their season opener a year ago against Eastern Kentucky. And for State's defenses post, the elite units of 2018 and then 2017 was really good defense too. 4 yards of play of defense allowed or just over is really good. Like you will take that all day. And even against some non-conference teams, because I look back, there's some state defenses that we looked at as good defenses that gave up more to non-conference games per play than that. No, they didn't have a ton of negative plays. I think it was 3 tackles for loss. You had 1 sack. You did get the 1 interception. Brylan Lanier making a great play on the ball there. But look, they weren't forcing a ton of huge havoc plays, although 2 4th-and-1 stops or 4th and short stops, you love to see it. But they were just doing a good job of limiting what Southern Miss could do offensively. Again, they were trusting Southern Miss's best chance of having success in this game was going to be hitting big plays. You question State's corners, and we'll talk about that here just in a second. I see Tucker's comment on that, and he's absolutely right. They played a great game. But you were concerned about State's corners. You knew Southern Miss has some good receivers. You knew that Braylon Braxton's a guy who's a playmaker at quarterback. The concern was if you let Southern Miss hit a bunch of big plays, that's how they get into this game. And I saw a lot of people talking about they want to see aggression. They don't want to see the three-man front. People have this mindset of like, well, State needs to be this attacking style on defense. And don't get me wrong, it's fun to watch, but I fully understand the mindset in this game of like Southern Miss over the course of 4 quarters, because of the guys we have on defense, and it is better talent than we had a year ago, they should not be able to sustainably drive and move the ball and put points on the board. You can't, they should not be able to put together these long 60, 70 play drives, 10 plus plays over and over and over again to put points on the board. We are trusting that our guys are going to win out more often than not, force them to have to run more plays in order to move the ball. And it worked out. Like that game plan, I think, was the correct approach to take going into this. And that includes doing some of the three-man front stuff. Look, because one, their defensive line is better up front this year. I know they didn't have as many, plays burst into the backfield as you would have liked to have seen. There were a few, though. But they did a good job of clogging up lanes. And that's a big thing. When you're running that style of defense, and even when they went to the 4-down front, they're really still doing the same thing. A lot of the style of defense State is designed around, trying to play is designed around this idea of do not let them, when they run inside zone, the most basic run play there is, don't let them immediately get upfield. Stuff the interior lanes, force the running back to have to try to bounce it outside, and then trust that our linebackers and our safeties are going to get there to meet him for a minimal gain. That's what they did all throughout. That's exactly how they played throughout this game. State's linebackers and safeties did a great job of rallying to the ball carrier. It wasn't just Isaac Smith. I mean, I've got the box score in front of me in terms of tackles on the game. 7 for Isaac Smith, 7 for Jay Smith, 6 for Brian Lanier, 6 for Malik Silla, 5 for Nick Mitchell, 4 for Tyler Woodard, 4 Jerron Manning, 4 Darian Gillette, 4 for Hunter Washington, 4 LaKendrick James, 4 Will Whitson, 4 Bledsoe. Dude, guys were getting involved. They rotated a lot of players. That's part of it. But you also had a lot of guys that just did a good job of coming up and stopping the runner. And I will take that all day. I will take that every single game they play this year. It's not even just that it's Southern Miss. But this was a game where I think it was a particularly smart approach because this is an offense in Southern Miss that was not going to be able to sustain drives. The only chance they had of staying in this game and keeping pace with State, assuming State's offense wasn't shooting itself in the foot like it did in the first half, was if you gave up big plays. They didn't give up the big plays. Southern had a couple nice gains, but over the course of the whole game, they kept everything in front of them, which you really love to see. Let's talk about those corners. And as Tucker Medlin said, for all the deserved crap Corey Bell has gotten, the cornerbacks were really, really good. Yeah, man, they impressed me in this game. And the thing was, it was concerning going in because you get the news before kickoff that Jett Jefferson is riding around on a scooter and has his foot wrapped. That's a guy who was not officially named a full-time starter. He had the OR designation with Diego Brumfield. That's what they were doing at both corner spots. But everyone kind of assumed he was going to start, especially because it sounded like he had a good offseason. It sounded like he shined throughout preseason camp. And you find out before the game, it's like, well, crap, we're already concerned about our corners, and the guy that we think might be one of our best is not going to play. Well, Diego Brumfield played pretty well. He didn't get thrown out a lot, but the first time that Southern chose to test him, he stepped up and handled his business. Kelly Jones had an outstanding game. Couple pass breakups. The one time he got beat, he didn't even get beat. It was a case of he didn't head around, which was an issue for him last year, and the receiver for Southern Miss makes a good catch. That's not ideal. You have to correct that because if he does get his head around there, that would have been broken up. It wouldn't have been a completion, and that is a drive Southern scored on. So maybe they don't get points on that drive. But overall, Kelly Jones played a really nice game, and I understand you have to take quality of competition into account here because no, Southern Miss does not have studs at receiver, but they've got some good receivers. They've got guys who can win vertically down the field, and State didn't let them do that. State played tight coverage throughout. And State's corners stepped up, and they did it without a ton of pass rush. I guess if you were to look at a bit of a concern here, and there were a lot of times State chose to just rush three, and I think one time they got home with three with Will Whitson at defensive line, at defensive end, but for the most part, you didn't get a ton of pressure. You would have liked to have seen more of that, but it didn't really matter because they weren't getting guys open downfield. So that is a huge testament to the guys at corner especially, but also the guys in the secondary as a whole. They played a good game. Speaking of that defensive line, because I do want to say, Will Whitson was really impressive. It wasn't like every single play you saw it look incredible, but 2.5 tackles for loss, gets a sack, 4 tackles on the day. You can see why he was the big get for Mississippi State out of the portal. Very much a disruptor. Dre Bledsoe, I thought, was fantastic at nose tackle. You see why he won the job. He getting that stuff right over the center on that first 4th down that they faced. If you get a guy at nose tackle that can be a space eater, and then you have Whitson as someone that can be a consistent disruptor, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape defensive line-wise. What about Smith tipping the ball back in bounds to a teammate for an almost pick? Thought that was a high IQ play. That was so cool. That was such a great play almost. That was a really good play almost that you could have gotten really excited about. But, yeah, man, State's defense, I thought, really rose to the occasion. And they played a lot of guys, too. They were rotating guys in the first half, frankly, names that I've barely heard of. Were guys out there running in the first half. And some of those guys even still stepped in and played well. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I remember a bunch of names straight up, but I remember seeing a few guys like, why is he in here? And he goes up and makes a tackle. It's like, all right, cool, that's fine. And then, the fourth quarter, it's mostly backups, and that's when Southern has 2 of their better drives and obviously get a touchdown there at the end. You're fine with that. The starting defense allowed 10 points in this game. And again, as we talked about it, and let me reference this. Here we go. From J.C. Dickinson, Southern Miss scoring drive, field goal off an interception in State's territory, which that was a huge momentum moment for Mississippi State where you got up 7-0, you forced a stop, and then you get the ball back, and Blake Shapen quickly throws an interception. And then State's defense just goes out and calmly forces a 3-and-out with 2 big plays from both of your corners. So that was huge for the defense. But they give up a field goal off when there was an interception deep in State territory. You have a touchdown pass while a wide receiver's laying on the backside. Again, that should have been an interception the other way, just kind of crazy play. Garbage time touchdown against backups. Defense stepped up. It was a nice performance, and I'm not trying to overreact to a game against Southern Miss, but Southern Miss has some pretty good skill talent. Southern Miss has a good quarterback. Now, State's defensive line had the edge. Did you see as many negative disruptive plays as you would have liked to have seen up front? No. Yes, I would have liked to have seen more pressure. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more penetration from the D-line, but the penetration part doesn't bother me as much when I consider, again, as I talked about earlier, the way they are trying to play defensively is around keeping in front of us, clog up the interior lanes, and slow the ball carrier from being able to get straight ahead downfield. That's something they tried to do last year, and they just didn't have the body to do it. Through one game, it looks like they've got the bodies to do that this year. So, I come away really happy with what I saw from the defense. And the big thing for me that I'll take away is, the whole idea of Coleman Hutzler getting his guys in position, because that was the whole big talking point of, how much of it is scheme and play calling and coaching versus just a lack of talent. And look, when you have repeated issues of guys not being able to tackle, guys missing plays, missing assignments, that does start to fall back on coaching. But we saw in this game, I felt like overwhelmingly, outside of one coverage bust, the only time Southern's guys had a big play is if State missed a tackle or just I think about they missed a tackle, the big play with Kelly Jones not getting his head around, and then the crazy touchdown. I will take that. I understand you're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss some tackles. You're not going to be totally clean. But they had guys in position all throughout the game. It's not like Southern Miss just had guys running free. They were stuffing the inside runs. Yes. Like last year, you could run inside zone against Mississippi State and get 5-6 yards a pop and not have any sort of problems. And UMass was doing that to them. Eastern Kentucky had moments where they did that to them. Southern Miss was not able to do that to Mississippi State. Allowed less than 3 yards of carry. Solid. Yeah. And again, they didn't have a ton of negative plays either. Like, if it's 3 yards of carry, but you look back and it's like, well, there were some huge losses for Southern Miss, but they also had a lot of big runs to sort of counteract it, then it's more boom or bust. They allowed less than 3 yards of carry without getting a ton of tackles for loss. They only had the one sack. They just did a good job of staying in front of things, limiting what Southern was able to do. I'm pleased with what I saw from the defense. I understand week one against a G5 opponent, but we saw this defense last year. And even in games like this, you can't sit here and say that they played great throughout. So I've got to be pleased with what I saw. What's it going to look like against Arizona State? I don't know. It might be a lot tougher, right? Sam Levitt's a really good quarterback. Jordan Tyson is an outstanding receiver. I know Cam Scadaboo's gone, but they've still got some really good running backs stepping in. They got a veteran offensive line. The defense is definitely going to be tested next week, and we're going to get a much better idea of where they're at. But one of the things I said for me, and again, we have to keep expectations relative for this team, because I don't think you're talking about in one off season after what you saw a year ago, they're going to get back to being a really strong, consistently good defense. I think they're still going to have some issues here along the way. But last year against bad competition, State's defense still could not get off the field consistently. Against teams that State should be able to outmatch, they couldn't get off the field consistently. They got off the field consistently today against a team that they should be able to do that. So you have to take what you saw against the defense and be happy with what you saw.